Good morning, and you're listening to the Changemakers radio show here on WVCR 88.3 The Saint, right here in Loudonville, New York, where we profile changemakers across the country and around the world. I'm your host, Sasha. Today on Changemakers, we have the pleasure of talking with Mr. Brad Shear, who is the executive director of the Mohawk Hudson Humane Society. Before I jump into conversing with Brad, I want to read a little bit of his bio. Brad Shear is the executive director of the Mohawk Hudson Humane Society, the oldest and largest animal protection organization in New York's capital region. He's worked in the animal protection field since 1996 and has been the director of the society since April 2007. Shear is the only certified animal welfare administrator in the region. Well, it's an honor to have you here this morning, Brad. Good morning. How are you?
Good morning. I am good.
Thank you again for joining us this morning.
Thanks for having me.
So let's just get into the thick of things. You're the executive director of the Mohawk Hudson Humane Society, MHHS.
Correct. Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about how you got there, your path, and how you ended up in this position.
Well, as you said, I've been working in animal welfare for 19 years. I started at the Humane Society of Boulder Valley in Boulder, Colorado.
Oh, Colorado.
I was, at the time, managing restaurants there, which was not a passion of mine, and was just not happy doing that. I was looking for something that served more of something that was a passion for me. And the Humane Society there was looking to improve their service to people. Very good, always had been very good about caring for animals, but needed a little work on caring for people, and that was sort of the expertise that I could bring with a service background that I had. So I started there and worked my way around to several different positions, from managing the front desk to managing the kennels. I was an animal cruelty investigator for several years. And then for about a year, I went to run the Center for Animal Care and Control in Brooklyn, New York, which is one of the largest animal shelters in the country. It was one of three facilities within the New York City Animal Control System. Went back to Boulder for a short time to, again, investigate cruelty, and then went to Atlanta to run the Atlanta Humane Society, the director of operations of Atlanta, and then came to the Capital Region 8 years ago.
Wow.
As the executive director of the Mohawk Hudson Humane Society, which was very exciting for me. It's been fantastic. It's just a great community.
So you've been all around the country.
I have been around a little bit, and it's been a learning experience for me. I've been able to be at a lot of different sorts of organizations and bring some of that knowledge here to the Capital Region and to the Mohawk Hudson Humane Society. And I think after putting together a good team here, both of staff, volunteers, and board members, we've done some good things over the last 8 years, and we've got more to go. We're very excited about the future.
So this show is all about changemakers in the Capital Region. So what do you like most about working here in this area?
I think they're just great people here. Any region you go to, it's just about the people. And for what I do, I find there's a tremendous passion for animals. And really what our organization is just a sort of a gathering point for people who are passionate about animals. We have certainly programs that help all kinds of animals, but we have over 300 volunteers who give their time to help us, and we couldn't even open the doors if we didn't have them. We are a donor-funded organization. We're not receiving money from the state, and so we depend on people who care about animals to keep the doors open. So I feel very lucky about that, and generally about the region. We have just a great diversity of people, of sort of physical types of places, from the cities to suburbia to country. I think it's a great place to live, and I
would definitely agree.
Yeah, I think it's sometimes people don't, I think, appreciate what we have here. I think it's a special place.
Great, thank you. So let's talk a little bit more about the Mohawk Humane Society. So what's the mission of the organization?
Our mission is to improve the lives of homeless and abandoned animals through sheltering, adoption, education, advocacy, and the prevention of animal cruelty. So we have a broad spectrum of programs that obviously help animals, but in many instances also help people in order to fulfill that mission.
And you said, and in your bio, I even read that you worked in various humane societies across the country.
Mhm.
Now, is that part of a national? Are all humane societies nationally affiliated, or
No,
are
we are an independent nonprofit
Mhm.
founded here in Albany, and we are not. We don't have any formal connection. We're not an
Okay.
affiliate to any other group. There are certainly organizations with a national scope that have a similar name, but we are not affiliated with them. We are local and actually older than any of them. So all these humane societies around the country are typically independent.
Interesting? Could you tell us a little bit more about the history of this specific humane society?
We were founded in 1887.
Uh-huh.
And originally founded as a child protection organization. And a few years after the founding, merged with a local animal protection organization. The original organization was the Albany Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Children.
Mm-hmm.
And after the merger became the Mohawk and Hudson River Humane Society. We changed that name again, obviously. But it was common at that time for both animal and child protection agencies to be merged into one, because the first there were actually animal protection laws created before child protection laws, and the first case of cruelty to children that was prosecuted in New York City, at least in the United States, was prosecuted in New York City based on the argument that children, like animals, were property, and they were similar types of property because legally they were both property, and that children should be protected just as animals were protected. There were better protections for animals at the time. So for many years, until the mid-'50s, we had shelters for both animals and children, and the children were typically kids who would have gone to jail, not necessarily orphaned, but what we would now call at risk. And the idea was they were rehabilitated, transferred to other organizations for adoption. When we got into the mid-'50s, other organizations were sort of springing up around child protection. The state got more involved, and our mission refocused to strictly animal welfare. The site we're on now in Menands was bought from the estate of the William Van Rensselaer for $1 in 1913. And the original barn that was built, because at the time it was primarily horses that were being protected, that original barn that was built in 1913 is still on the property. It's still in use today. So there's quite a lot of great history, and Albany has a history of being a national leader in animal protection. At the time, the American Humane Association was based here, and the president of the American Humane Association was also the president of our board for about 25 years in the early 1900s.
Well, you just taught me a whole bunch about the Capital Region, animal and children welfare. I had no idea that's how animal and children protection started. I didn't know they were joined. That's really fascinating. So let's talk a little bit more about the Mohawk Humane Society's programs before we have to take a short break. Could you tell us a little bit about the programs that the Humane Society offers?
Sure. I think what we're best known for is animal adoption. We last year found homes for over 3,500 animals. We are by far the most popular place in the Capital Region to get a pet. And there are 4 locations you can adopt from: the PetSmart in Glenmont, the main shelter in Menands, the PetSmart in Latham Farms, and the Petco in Clifton Park. In addition to the adoption services, we're taking the stray animals for 16 municipalities, most of Albany and Rensselaer counties, through contracts with municipalities. We are the SPCA for both Albany and Rensselaer counties, which means we can commission peace officers to enforce the cruelty laws in those counties. So we go out and we investigate animal cruelty in both counties. We have an agreement, again, in Albany and Rensselaer counties with the providers of domestic violence services. So when a victim of domestic violence goes into the shelters of Equinox or Unity House, they are asked if they have pets, and if they do have pets, their pets can come with them when leave their abuser,
really
and we will take care of those pets for them. We have a pet food pantry. We provide pet food to 7 food pantries throughout the Capital Region, so people who are in need of services of food pantry and have pets can also take pet food. And we've heard from some of those pantries that people were taking human food to feed their pets because they had no other option. So we avoid that issue now. We have a spay and neuter program to spay or neuter the pets that belong to low-income people or people on public assistance. And we are the primary provider of animal response services in times of disaster for Albany County, and actually for the entire capital region. Albany, Schenectady, and Rensselaer have a cooperative agreement when it comes to response to animals in disaster, so we would be called up to respond to those as well. So that's the quick rundown.
Ooh, certainly expansive.
It's
very expansive.
Yes, yeah.
So when you mentioned how you worked with municipalities, does that mean pound, or are you a separate entity from a local pound, or do you have a connection with?
In New York State, every municipality is required to have a dog control officer and a shelter to take the dogs to.
Okay.
And they can either have their own or contract with an organization like ours to use our facilities. So we contract with 16 municipalities to provide those services. So we will, if a stray dog gets picked up in one of those municipalities, they would come to us. They'd be held for a state mandated period of time before they could be placed for adoption, or obviously picked up by the original owners. Similarly with cruelty cases, if there was a victim of animal cruelty, they would be seized and brought to us in those municipalities as well. Although in many cruelty cases, because of the size of our facility, we're actually taking animals from counties that don't have large enough facilities and helping them in cases of cruelty. So those municipalities actually get a great deal because they don't have to maintain their own facilities, but they don't own any part. It's just it's an annual contract that we can renew or not. They don't have any control over our facilities.
And on average, what are the kinds of animals you see?
The number one animal we see is cats. Almost 70% of the animals we get are cats, and dogs. And our third most common animals, rabbits. And
wow,
we'll
really?
But we see pretty much any domestic house pet: birds, guinea pigs, gerbils, ferrets, chinchillas, you name it. We see them. What we try to avoid is large animals like horses, goats, the livestock, although we have partnerships with quite a few groups that have better facilities for those kinds of animals, so we can sort of manage the intake of those and try to avoid them actually coming to our property. We don't really have appropriate facilities for them, but we have quite a few partners throughout the capital region who can help with those animals.
So animal advocacy as well as all the other programs and initiatives that you've discussed.
Yeah, I mean both advocating for animals, and also we do some legislative advocacy for animals in addition to my role at the Mohawk Hudson Humane Society. I'm the president of the New York State Animal Protection Federation, which is a statewide association of similar groups like ours that advocates for animals and for animal shelters.
Well, thank you again. I'm speaking with Brad Shear from the Mohawk Hudson Humane Animal Society. We'll be right back here on Changemakers on WVCR 88.3 The Saint.
Going down for you, shining on my...
And we're back on the Changemakers radio show here on WVCR 88.3 The Saint, right here in Loudonville, New York, where we profile changemakers across the country and around the world. I'm back here with our guest, Brad Shear from the Mohawk Hudson Humane Society. So before we went on our brief break, we discussed a bunch of things, the history of humane societies, in particularly Mohawk Hudson's Humane Society. And I learned a lot. But let's talk a little bit more about the adoption process, because that's obviously a big part of many humane societies. So for our listeners who may even be interested in adopting animals, what's the process like at the Mohawk Hudson Humane Society?
Well, what our goal is really to make good matches between your lifestyle and the pet you're looking for. What most people do first is go on our website, and our website lists all the animals available for adoption. That website is live. It's tied right into our computers at the Humane Society. So as soon as an animal's available, it's there. As soon as they're adopted, they're taken down off the website. So that's reliable information, updated live. When you come in, we want you to spend as much time as you want to spend, the more the better, with an animal and see if they're right for you. So our adoption counselors will talk to you about your history with an animal. What kind of pets have you had in the past? What are you looking for? Do you spend your Saturday sitting on the couch watching TV, or are you going to hike up mountains? And that's two different kinds of animals
That's
who
actually
are
good
going
to know.
fit into your lifestyle. So we try to get to know you, and hopefully we know our animals as well as we possibly can, and make a good match. And what we find is that if that match is right and the personalities are right, that animal's going to stay in that home. So we're very open to all kinds of different lifestyles. There's nobody perfect out there. We just want you to find the right pet. And sometimes people come in looking for a puppy, and maybe a puppy's not right. If a puppy isn't house trained and needs to go out every few hours, and you're gone for 10 hours a day,
That's not gonna
that's probably not the right animal for you. You might need a cat. So we start out from zero with no judgments about what's right for an individual person. We just want to get those two together, that person and animal, and that's where we are most successful.
And how long, if you could ballpark a figure, how long would you say the whole adoption process takes? A few days, a few weeks, months?
Oh, no. When you between coming in and leaving with an animal, I mean, that could be done in an hour and a
really?
half. It just depends on you and how many different animals you want to meet, how much time you want to spend with that animal, how many questions you have for our adoption counselors. We're very flexible about it. So if that match is right, we can come in and get out fairly quickly. There's really no reason to delay. And for us, there's so many animals coming in that we want to keep the flow of animals moving. We're to the point now where we can help other shelters that are overcrowded and take some animals from them because we can keep animals moving so quickly. And we want to make the right match. We don't want to rush, but there's no reason for us to artificially slow down that process.
Great. And I know you working there, you probably have seen a lot of great adoption stories. Would you mind sharing one with us?
Yeah, I mean, one of the best we've had in a long time is, a couple of years ago, there was really a terrible cruelty case that a lot of people here would know about, the railroad puppies, they were called. There were 3 puppies abandoned on railroad tracks down on North Pearl Street, and they were horribly abused. All 3 of them had injuries to their rear left legs. They came to us. One of them actually died within 24 hours of coming. One of them had the bottom of his rear left leg cut off. The other one had the middle digits of the leg cut off. So the one who had his half of his back leg cut off was named Hudson. I just saw him last Saturday, so now he's about 2.5 years old. And he has a prosthetic paw, which is sort of like a Blade Runner style paw. He gets around great. He's had to go through several different iterations of that device as he grows and as he adjusts and make sure he has the right one. We've been very lucky that we've had veterinarians donate their time. We've had the manufacturer of those artificial paws donate their product. Hudson, last year, became a certified therapy dog.
Oh.
And so he visits kids, and mostly kids who are at risk, and tells his story about just overcoming the odds. He was on the edge of death, lost his paw, and he's a wonderful, wonderful dog with a fantastic personality, and he's really given back to the community that rallied around him. It was astounding to me, the outpouring of support we got around these dogs and the suffering that they went through and the support that they have. So he's a real ambassador for adoption, for what the community can do. He's also a pit bull, and he's has a fantastic personality. So he's a great ambassador for pit bulls, and he really embodies what the Humane Society does, getting animals who you think might not have a chance, and now he is an important part of the community.
Well, listeners, there you have it. If you are interested in learning more about adopting a pet, you can find information on Mohawk Hudson Humane Society's website, which is
mohawkhumane.org.
Great. That is a tremendously happy story. I've seen a lot of dog abuse, particularly. I'm from Cleveland, and there's a very large stray dog population there, and I've seen a lot of abuse. So knowing that there are organizations like yours out there fighting against that. That's really heartwarming.
I think one of the things about that situation that was a little bit saddening for me is we heard from it made national news, and we heard from other people around the country who said, in our community, that dog wouldn't have had a chance, wouldn't have survived, nobody would have cared.
There are many
And so
communities like
it tells you something about this community, that there was no question in our minds that we had the support of the community, that we could take this dog in and he would get the veterinary care and he would get everything he needed, because this community rallies around those kinds of needs.
That's great. So, moving on from your adoption process, besides the programs that you offer, are there any events, big events that you have throughout the year, or fundraising, tournaments?
The next event we have coming up is August 8th is our annual Feline Fest, which is a celebration of the cat. We will have, it actually lasts for 4 days, but the 8th is on the Saturday, is sort of an all-day festival. We have vendors coming down with cat-related items and food and face painting for kids and a lot of fun kids activities. We have discounts on adoption, and we try to educate people about cats and their needs and what great pets they are, because, as I said earlier, they're almost 70% of the animals we get in are cats. And we've made great strides in changing the problems of overpopulation for dogs, but we have a long way to go with reducing the number of cats in need in the community. So it's a fun event for the family. It's a great time to adopt a pet. And then in October 15th is our Art Saves Animals event. That's at the Art Center in Troy. It's our annual silent and live art auction, cocktails, hors d'oeuvres. It's a very nice, fun event, and you can check our website for information about that. But always sort of casual and enjoyable event. And the artwork is not necessarily all animal related. So right now we're also looking for art donations to auction off at that event. And then October 24th is an event we call Pity Palooza, which is, again, a celebration of the pit bull, the most common dog we see. And you'll probably see Hudson there, and a lot of adopted pit bulls that are just fantastic dogs. And we're trying to change the image of the breed so people understand that there's some really great and well-tempered pit bulls out there, and several therapy dogs now that have been adopted from us.
That's great. So if any of our listeners wanted to volunteer or offer their services or even donate art, how could they get in contact with you?
Well, certainly the website, mohawkhumane.org, has all our contact information. The main phone number is 434-8128. If you're interested in volunteering, you go to the website, and there's across the top, you'll see a drop down for volunteering. There's an online volunteer application. You fill that out. That goes to our volunteer manager, and he'll contact you about the date of the next orientation. So we start out with an orientation, and then there's specific training classes depending on what area you're actually going to volunteer in.
You mentioned while you were discussing some of your events, education. Now, does your organization have a program that's focused completely on educating the population about animals? Is it for adults and children?
Yeah, we focus mainly on kids. We have volunteers, several retired teachers actually who are going into schools or have kids coming to us, whether it's Girl Scouts or Boy Scout troops. They'll come in, they'll get a tour, and we'll do an education program for them. Obviously different depending on the age, but they can, again, contact the Humane site. Is set up at either someone coming to your school or bringing your school group to us to learn, again, depending on the age, about proper animal care, about what the Humane Society does, and try to build that relationship with kids and animals. One of the things that we know from quite a bit of research is that kids who have a good relationship with animals and who grew up with animals have higher empathy scores than kids who did not. And that the kids who grew up with animals are more likely to go into professions that help people and help the community. So they are really an important part of childhood.
Well, Brad, thank you again for coming on and telling us and educating us and the listeners on animal advocacy and the Mohawk Humane Society. Before we go, we have a tradition on Changemakers to ask our favorite question, and I'm going to pose it to you. So what does a change maker mean to you?
I think a change maker is just a person who has a passion and takes action. And when you put passion and action together, then one person can make a difference. And that's really, we're just a group of people who care, and a group of individuals who have decided to do something about a problem. And that's how change is made.
Thank you. Similar to that question, since you are part of an organization that creates change daily, where do you see your organization going in 5 years, or where would you like to see it go?
I think we're going to see us focusing more and more on spay and neuter services. First of all, is helping animals that are outside of the shelter. Traditionally, organizations like ours have really focused inside our walls. And I think you will see us reaching more out into the community, working on prevention.
Mm-hmm.
How do we stop these animals from coming into our facility? How do we help people who can't afford to take care of their pets themselves? How do we prevent animals from being born? And how do we build that relationship between people and their pets to make sure they stay in homes? So I think you'll see us not getting away from our traditional shelter role, but adding a component that reaches out more into the community and continues to work more and more on prevention.
Wow. Well, thank you again, Brad. Thank you for the Mohawk Humane Society for being a voice in animal cruelty and animal advocacy. That's our time. Join us here on Changemakers every Saturday morning at 10:30 a.m. on WVCR 88.3 The Saint.
It's only